Yeah, I'll react to that, sure.
This is our planet. Planet Earth.
It's a planet I'm literally on right now. And unless you're watching this on a long-haul flight or while falling off a building, chances are you are too. This is the incredible story of how humankind transformed our world from being a load of pointless nature like this to full of modern things like this, and how it did it using nothing more than its hands and its imagination, and also tools and electricity and the internet.
It's a journey that'll take me to every corner of the globe money and pandemic travel restrictions would allow, getting up close to some of our species' most stunning achievements. And I'll be asking questions. Who are you? To leading academics, clever noughts and expertists who will help me unlock the mystery of human civilization. Why do they say it's a mystery how the pyramids were built when it's obviously just big bricks in a triangle?
This is not just the story of the planet we live in.
True.
This is the story of the world we live on, or both.
So join me, Philomena Cunk, for a landmark look at the world we built together.
This is Conk on Earth!
Cunk. Philomena Cunk. Episode
For
1.
billions of years, there was no civilization on Earth, just animals, plants, and gases.
I just want to say, I'd say there's a 95% chance that this gets copyrighted fully. It's on BBC, and that no one is watching me at all. So I'm just kind of just going to be chillax. But if by some miracle of God you are watching me right now, that's embarrassing because I'm not going to be professional.
Getting on and mingling. Must have been beautiful. But
Who?
animals, plants. For billions of years, there was no civilization on Earth, just animals, plants, and gases, getting on and mingling. Must have been beautiful, but also boring. Until along came a creature that would change all that. Human man. Was early man similar to us? I mean, was he made out of the same sort of meat that we are? You know, did it have a brand name like beef or pork?
As far as we can tell, they were made out of the same stuff as us. All we have is bones, of course, and they're exactly the same as our bones. We can only assume that the bones were encased in...
That's a good question, guys. How, and I've heard this question posed before. How far back in time would you have to go to take a human, or to take, like, how far back in our evolutionary history would you have to go for us to take a infant from that era in the past, bring them to today, and then raise them as any other kid, but there's still an obvious difference? Like, how far back would we have to go?
In flesh, something like ours bones. We can only assume that the bones were encased in flesh, something like ours, but I'm not aware of any kind of brand name that they would have had.
So it would have just been flesh.
Just flesh, I think, yes.
It would be hard to come up with a brand name for human flesh, wouldn't it?
Spunk?
Horf?
We often assume early
spunk
men
means
were
something
stupid
bad.
because they had big eyes.
Spunk means something different, doesn't it? Man.
We often assume early men were stupid because they had big eyebrows and said ugh, but in fact, they were pioneering inventors.
I love
They were
her.
the first men to use tools, which is something most men have forgotten how to do today. Which is why they have to get someone in, a real man. How did early man make tools whilst walking on all fours?
Well, we don't think that they walked on all fours for too long. We're pretty sure they were walking upright for at least the last 2 million years.
So did they make the tools with their front legs or their hind legs?
Well, I don't think humans have ever been very good at making things with
I know this is a comedy thing, but another good question. When is it that arms and hands were no longer used for bodily support at all when moving, unless you're climbing something.
Their feet, so yes, it would have been the front legs. Well, I don't think humans have ever been very good at making things with their feet, so yes, it would have been the front legs that they used for making tools.
Right, so in leg
I've
terms,
seen
it would have
some
been their top
porn.
legs.
Yes, I think they would certainly have used the top legs for making tools, or arms and hands, as we call them today.
One thing they did invent was fire, which allowed them to see at night and kept them warm. Tragically,
Inventing fire. That's like inventing lightning.
was fire, which allowed them to see at night and kept them warm, tragically prolonging their already tedious lives.
But they had to invent something to do during the long, boring evenings, and that something
Drawing?
was art.
She in France?
I'm entering a cave, not by mistake or because I'm a wolf, but because I've been specifically asked to come here by the producers to look at cave art.
Cave paintings like these are one of the first examples of civilization on Earth. Don't worry, it gets better.
Early cave artists started out painting whatever was close to hand, like their hands. Then they branched out into stories, initially just boring stories about cows standing still.
But soon they began creating white-knuckle fight scenes like this. Humans versus cows 2D. To a caveman, this was the thrilling equivalent of Fast and Furious Part 7.
Okay. I'm impressed with either answer to my question, but is she in a actual cave where this stuff is real? Or because I didn't think she'd be allowed to, or is this recreated, which is more likely to look like old stuff, in which case they did a really good job.
This was the thrilling equivalent of Fast and Furious Part 7. Have any of the cave paintings been adapted into films? I suppose they couldn't get the rights anyway, though, could they?
Filmmaking obviously arose much, much later than the end of the cave paintings.
So there hasn't been like a cave wall that's been like, oh my God, that's an incredible story. We need to get Steven Spielberg to make this.
It would be hard to come up with a story that would last an hour and a half based on just one panel.
That's a good idea.
Some believe these violent images were painted as a religious act intended to bring good luck in upcoming battles.
We don't know why humankind was at war with the cows, and tragically, we never will. In fact, we'll probably never even know the name of the artist or these cows, because whoever painted this is almost certainly dead now.
Hunting animals every day was a pain in the arse, until someone came up with the idea of also eating plants, which were easier to catch because they couldn't run away.
But less tasty.
This simple act of laziness led to the invention of
I gotta say though, I'm not a vegetable fan, but some nice spinach cooked correctly I like, with bacon bits in it. Brussels sprouts have grown on me a little, but still not amazing. Green beans, as long as you're not boiled or canned. I mean like sauteed green beans. What did I just do?
first ever
animal.
Spoilers. Spoilers. What was I saying? I forget what I was asking.
This simple act of laziness led to the invention of farming.
Oh yeah. I love sauteed green beans. I love broccoli mostly. I love asparagus.
Huge leap forwards, which was now more dangerous because you might land on one of the farming implements that were suddenly lying around.
The early farmers grew wheat and learned to bake bread. They also grew barley, peas and lentils, so they could have made a passable vegan burger to put inside the bread. But luckily, they didn't have to.
Thank you.
Because they'd also invented this, the fence, a high-tech wooden machine for containing animals.
Humans quickly enslaved sheep, chickens, goats, and their number one enemies, the cows. Farms became a lot like zoos, except of course in a zoo, you can't pick out an animal you like the look of and kill it and eat it, unless perhaps the zoo itself is struggling financially and the owner's lost all hope. Humans turned animals they couldn't eat or ride into pets, if they were pretty enough.
Early man domesticated dogs for companionship and cats for whatever we have cats for.
This was the first time in history life could be described as cosy. People lived in proper houses, which soon grew to become cities.
It's hard to believe I'm walking through the ruins of the first ever city, because I'm not. That's in Iraq, which is miles away, and fucking dangerous. But the remains of it look pretty much like this. So you'd never know I wasn't actually there if I wasn't telling you now by accident.
Today it's just a dismal load of...
When I was young, we used to make these things every fall called leave forts, where one of my friend's dads had a huge lawn. It had a bunch of leaves to collect, and he would always bring them over to us in the woods right nearby. And we would create these huge, really cool tunnels of you know, obviously the sticks as the framing, and then covered in leaves, and it was pretty intricate.
Bricks and dust. But if you use a modern computer to simulate what it used to look like, the results are nothing short of breathtaking. Civilization had begun.
Who invented civilization?
Civilization wasn't something that was invented or something that started.
She's like the
abruptly.
female Sacha Baron
We
Cohen.
talk about civilization once humans started agriculture, once they started building cities and creating laws. That was something that happened gradually in different parts of the world rather than just being invented suddenly.
Yeah, so it wasn't just one man who wanted to remain anonymous.
No.
Because that would be something we shouldn't go along with if it was.
Do you mean we shouldn't go along?
If it's one man who wants to remain anonymous, there's something a bit shifty about that, isn't there?
So civilization was invented in Mesopotamia by person or persons unknown.
And frickin' ISIS, I hate you, ISIS, come get me. Ruined a bunch of stuff.
But whoever was
because it wasn't their god, and so we gotta wreck everything for everyone else. That would have been really cool.
Invented in
Frickin' ISIS.
Mesopotamia by person or persons unknown. But whoever they were way ahead of their time.
Did the Mesopotamians have any of the same things that we have today?
Yes.
Like what?
Weapons, jewellery, temples,
buildings,
animals.
Oh, right. No, I meant like feet and eyebrows and that sort of thing.
Yes, yes.
They did?
They had the whole set of organs, holes.
They
bits
didn't
that work
have
together,
pinky toes.
Bits on the outside, bits on the inside.
So they had the same number of holes and everything?
As far as science is in a position to reassure you, yes.
One of their most significant killer apps was something we still use to this day, the circle. Wheels might look complicated to the...
I heard they didn't have wheels in ancient Egypt. How stupid. Also, even more blows my mind, there are civilizations that never even had a writing system. How smart do you have to be to just know, hey, if I write this thing here, it means something, and we can create a record. But no, there are still places that don't have writing systems.
Likes of you, the circle. Wheels might look complicated to the likes of you, but the way they work is actually simple.
You roll them.
The circle bit here revolves around a sort of sticky out bit in the middle.
Axis?
And then as the wheel skin here pushes against the ground, the pressure rolls the entire planet back and away from you, giving you the impression that you're moving forward, which incredibly you actually are.
Just like how I think when I do push-ups, I feel like I'm pushing the whole world down rather than me up.
The wheel allowed people to travel around trading things, but first they needed to count how many things they owned, and that led to the tragic invention of maths.
Let's talk
Writing?
maths and
Rosetta
numbers.
Stone?
Were numbers worth less back in ancient times, or did they have the same value as now, only bigger?
Numbers had the same value as they do now in ancient times, yeah. People still needed to count things.
And did they have the same number of numbers as we do? You know, from 1 to 700, with 700 being the biggest number?
700 has never been the biggest number. You can count to as many as you like.
No, I saw a thing on YouTube.
I'm a very skeptical person, okay? I'm almost annoyingly cynical, you know? Like, I'm one of those people that's like, you don't want to bring to like a haunted house ride or like someone to like watch a movie with. I'm the worst person because I'm always like, well, is that possible? Forget what I was going to say.
After 700's numbers repeat. They just give them...
700 has never been the biggest number.
Oh, yeah. So if you search for enough professionals, I'm sure you'll find some that will humor you, right? But just like Sacha Baron Cohen, where I was skeptical, right? I was cynical. I'm like, this is staged, okay? And I don't blame it for being staged. It's content. That's how you make content. You get people in that are in on it and act the way as if they're not. But that's not how Sacha Baron Cohen does it. Do you want to know how I know why? He had Ken Hovind. Ken Hovind, I think that's it.
You can count.
Don't look. I'm going to type really fast so you can't see any of the sick, twisted stuff I look up on Google at night. Ken Hovind. Yes. This guy is a super, super creationist Christian. And the way I figured out that Ali G is not staging things with his interviews is that they got this guy on. And this guy would never agree to come onto an Ali G show if he knew what it was. And so from then on, I'm like, Ali G is freaking genius. Sacha Baron Cohen is genius. They get people to go who are unaware, who think they're going for a real intellectual discussion, and he tricks them. And so the same goes...
We start
with Cunk. What's her real name? Is that like they actually get people to go along with it?
So
700 being the biggest number.
700 has never been the biggest number. You can count to as many as you like.
No, I saw a thing on YouTube. After 700's numbers repeat. They just give them different names so you think they're still going up. Do you want me to send it to you?
With numbers going as high but no higher than 700, people needed something to help them count.
That's where this came in.
Oh,
it's called abacus.
Using
Abacus.
abacus, our ancestors could count how many possessions they owned. It was a short step from this to the invention of money. In the form of...
So does it work like...
It was a short step from this...
Does it work like the abacus? Like the first row is ones and then the second row is tens and then like hundreds and thousands. So you can go like 2 10, that's like 23, or that's like...
Step from this to the invention of money. In the form of cash.
Ancient people invented currency to make life on Earth easier, but in doing so, they inadvertently invented capitalism, which is going to kill everyone.
No, it's
Sorry,
awesome.
that's not a question. It's just something I read on Twitter. Having conquered numbers, humankind moved on to something even more boring by inventing writing. Was the invention of writing
Rosetta
a
Stone?
significant development or more of a flash in the pan like rap metal?
I think once writing was thought up, once it appeared in the world, it was unstoppable.
So it was much, much bigger than rap metal then?
Yes, much
Yeah.
bigger.
What about acid jazz?
I still would put writing ahead of it.
No, I just wondered what you thought of acid jazz. What's this?
It's a cast, it's not the real thing. It purports to stand in for a Mesopotamian clay tablet written in cuneiform writing, the first kind of writing that appeared in the world, writing on clay tablets.
As books go, I have to say, it's quite a boring cover, isn't it? It doesn't even look like it opens properly.
Are you one of the people that judge?
A boring cover, isn't it? It doesn't even look like it opens properly.
Are you one of the people that judges a book by the cover?
Yeah, I am.
Well, that's a sad and misguided view.
If someone shouted this aloud, would that have been the first audiobook?
No.
Writing changed the world. Suddenly ideas didn't have to disappear.
So I heard that writing was what started as a sort of like, okay, I gave this guy three grain bushels, right? And so you draw like a simple thing that obviously looks like it's a piece of wheat or grain, right? And then like someone else has like fish or like two fish that they owe you. And so like you make a drawing of a fish, like a simple, and then that just kind of transformed into words. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, just writing changed the world. Suddenly ideas didn't have to disappear just because the person whose head they were trapped in had died.
Instead, you could convert your ideas into writing, and then anyone else could come along and upload those ideas into their own brain by wirelessly importing them through their eyes. Incredibly,
True.
despite being invented thousands of years ago, writing still exists today, underneath video clips that we watch online.
And it's here you'll also find another kind of handmade
Video
That's like my comment section.
clips that we watch online.
This is so lame. Shit, shoot. Why did this loser even bother? I'm laughing, but only at how much this sucks. Screw you guys. That's just like you.
You'll also find another kind of handmade language that still endures, emoji, or as the ancient Egyptians who invented them called them, hieroglyphics.
True. That's a good analogy.
They told whole stories in hieroglyphic code.
I can read hieroglyphics actually. I studied at
Or as the
Oxford.
ancient
At
Egyptians who
Oxford.
invented them called them, hieroglyphics.
I'll give you a boat for 2 snakes, a pipe, 3 bushels of wheat, and one of my daughters. I guess that's a good trade. I'll give you breast cancer awareness for 3 sailboats, a cat, and a camel. I'll give you 2 spears, a heron head, an eyeball, for a well with water, and a thing.
They told whole stories in hieroglyphic code. It's like a more coherent Marvel comic. Rather than being put up in public where living people could enjoy them, these Egyptian comic strips were painted on the walls of tombs to entertain dead people. And those tombs lay beneath some of the most recognisable, not to mention pointiest, buildings in history. I'm talking about the pyramids.
Looking
Why
at
am
the
I falling in
pyramids
love
today,
with her?
It's impossible not to be struck by the thought that they're basically big triangles
With a
sort of square arse. There's probably a word for that shape, but literally no one knows what it might be. It's one of the many timeless
Is she
mysteries
married?
of the pyramids.
Why are pyramids that shape? Is it to stop homeless people sleeping on them?
I don't think they had many homeless people in ancient Egypt.
Or do they not?
No, people looked after each other, I think, and helped each other.
Right. I suppose it's good with rain.
cap. Oh, wait. I guess it was a myth that the pyramids were built by slaves. Well, slaves helped. Probably like the White House. I think the White House was constructed by slaves, but I actually don't know that. I'm not going to talk.
I don't think they had many homeless people in ancient Egypt.
Oh, did they not?
No, people looked after each other.
I seriously have no idea about what I just said. Just disregard it.
I think they had many homeless people in ancient Egypt.
Oh, did they not?
No, people looked after each other, I think, and helped each other.
Right. I
Yep.
suppose it's good with rain as well, because it'll just roll off. How did Egyptians build the pyramids? Did they start? It'll just roll off.
Oh God, why did I come to this interview?
How did Egyptians build the pyramids? Did they start at the top and work down, or start at the bottom and work up?
They had to start at the bottom and work up because it would be impossible to start at the top and work down.
No, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't. You could start with one giant column in the middle. Never mind. I'm gonna stop talking. It's annoying me,
The
and I.
Egyptians believed the most significant thing you could do in your life was die. And the more important you were, the more complicated your death had to be. Egyptian kings were known as pharaohs, and when they died, they'd get turned into mummies of Scooby-Doo fame.
The ancient Egyptians were obsessed with dead people, weren't they? But they're all dead themselves now, so do you think they still feel that way?
The ancient Egyptians weren't obsessed with dead people, but actually they were obsessed with life. They wanted to be alive, and they wanted to make sure that when they died, they came alive again, and that's why they did mummification.
So how did they mummify people? Talk me through the process.
The scooping
You'd
spoon.
get your dead body, and you'd lay it out on a table, and then you wash it, and then you start by removing the brain, and then they would cut open down the middle of the body, and they would take out anything that they thought would rot.
Put it in urns.
And then they would cover it in salt and dry it out, and then they would wrap it in bandages, and then that would be a mummy.
So the kind of spa treatment that Gwyneth Paltrow has on a weekly basis. So the kind of spa treatment that Gwyneth Paltrow has on a weekly basis.
The egg.
Has a mummy ever ridden a bicycle?
Not that I know of, no. But the ancient Egyptians didn't have bicycles.
Right.
They didn't even have roads, so they couldn't have a bicycle because they couldn't ride a bicycle.
Well, I don't know why I asked that. I couldn't think of anything else to say.
Didn't have roads. Yeah, what do you
While
mean?
the pharaohs of Egypt left a legacy of temples and tombs, across the
They didn't have roads. What did they ride their chariots down?
water, an even more left a legacy of temples and tombs. Across the water, an even more impressive empire was appearing.
Greece, the country, not
I was
the
going to say
musical,
Greek.
was where the birth of civilization was born. The ancient Greeks invented lots of things we still have today, like medicine and olives. And lots of
Cunnilingus.
things that have died out, like democracy and pillars.
As well as these impressive ruins, the ancient Greeks also developed culture in the form of yogurt and theatre in all its tedious forms.
The Greeks were into tragedies. In a tragedy, sad things happen, like
Tragedy and comedy. I know the difference. So a comedy is something that. So if I remember from Ling and Lit class from 9th grade, a comedy is something that starts off bad and ends up good. And a tragedy is something that starts off good and ends up bad, I think.
people dying or killing themselves. But the ancient Greek tragedies happened ages ago. Are the things that happen in them still sad?
They are still sad because what the tragedies tell are stories about humans who we can relate to in some cases.
University
But
of
it was
Bristol,
so
that's
long
where I
ago.
live.
Why should I care?
Well, again, tragedy is often about human situations. Even today, if you found out that by accident you'd killed your own father and married your mother, you'd be quite upset.
Oedipusy.
Just as Oedipus was.
Maybe I'm cold, but I just don't give a shit about people in ancient Greece.
That's a shame.
Do you?
I do care quite a lot, yeah. It's my job.
My mate Paul wrote a story about a man who got a new potato stuck up himself following an ill-advised sex game. And he wrote that in the form of a limerick. No one died, but it sounds horrendous. Is that a tragedy? Or would the potato have to take root and kill him for it to qualify?
It sounds like a very unfortunate incident. I'm not sure it has a more timeless relevance that might make it a tragedy.
Paul said it really
Of course, it's timeless. People have been doing that since.
happened as well.
Honestly, he's had...
Man, I have to shut up. My ADD is really bad right now. I'm pausing like crazy.
Incident. I'm not sure it has a more timeless relevance that might make it a tragedy.
Paul said it really happened as well. Honestly, he's had such a time of it lately. He really needs a holiday.
The Greeks also created a kind of theatre for stupid people known as sport. They started the Olympic Games without inviting other countries to ensure Greece...
A theater for stupid people. Okay.
They started the Olympic Games without inviting other countries to ensure Greece would win.
The contenders at these early Olympics took part completely naked, partly because an athletic physique was considered a virtue, but mainly because lycra wasn't available. I heard was considered
lycra
a virtue, but mainly because lycra wasn't available. I heard that at the early Olympics, athletes had to compete in the nude.
So they did compete naked, and there are writings about this being quite an erotic sight in some cases.
With wrestling, with all that rig...
Yeah, what if you were wrestling with a guy and you started to get a... That'd be kind of awkward. In my opinion, we should go back to that. Get rid of every Olympic sport, ever. Summer, winter, get rid of it all. And come back and introduce just wrestling. And have one weight group. No weight groups. No weight groups. All right? Just wrestling. In the nude or not, I don't care. Just to see, like, who can bring the strongest, best wrestler out of every country.
About. They'd have seen
right in some cases.
With wrestling, with all that wriggling about, they'd have seen right up their bumholes and everything. Couldn't they censor it for people watching it in the auditorium, modesty patches or something? Or ask people to close their eyes each time someone bends over?
I think that probably wouldn't have worked.
But you'd have seen right up their bumholes.
That's the point.
In some cases, people might have done.
Did Zeus really approve of that?
I heard Zeus was messed up. I bet you Zeus was like, this isn't enough.
But perhaps the most famous form of wrestling the Greeks invented was mental wrestling. Philosophy is basically thinking about thinking, which sounds like a waste of time because it is. Although a philosopher might argue that that time they've wasted never existed in the first place, at which point you'd probably give up talking to them and open a packet of biscuits.
These are the ancient Greek philosophers.
Biscuits.
Is that Aristotle?
These are the ancient Greek philosophers. Not the actual ones, there'd be a load of dust and bones now. Maybe some teeth if you're lucky. These are just clever simulations made of rock.
The Greek philosophers came up with bold new theories about life on Earth. That's why we still know their names today, even though they haven't put out any new material in ages. Socrates.
I heard, guys, I don't know, I might be wrong, but I heard that Socrates might not have even been a real person. Like, he might have been fiction. Like, he might have not been a lot. Like, he might have... I said what I meant to say. Is that true? Like, Socrates might have been fictional. Or just not real.
Pythagoras. This one. Him.
Homer?
And this is Plato. As you can see, even now, centuries after his death, he's still deep in thought, concocting clever theories in his head. If only we could hold a microphone to the side of his brain and hear them for ourselves. But we can't. And even if we could, they'd be in Greek, which no one on our production team can speak.
Is Greek Cyrillic or Cyrillic related?
Plato handed...
The Greek alphabet seems like such a unique alphabet. Like, it's not Latin. I don't think it's Cyrillic. Maybe it is. It's not Arabic. It's not North African.
In Greek, which no one on our production team can speak.
Plato handed his wisdom onto a student who would become one of the most influential thinkers of all time. Aristotle.
And then
Aristotle
Alexander
said a lot of clever things, didn't he? My favourite is, you've got to dance like nobody's watching. It's so true, and you can apply it to anything. because my confidence is quite brittle at times, and I know I come across as quite confident, but sometimes when I'm talking to experts, I worry that, you know, I might come across as a bit stupid. And when I think of Dance Like No One's Watching, that really helps me. You know, it's like a gift. What made Aristotle think of that?
I'm not aware that Aristotle said that particular thing about dancing when no one's watching. I don't think he said that.
He did, didn't he?
If he did, I don't know, and I don't know why, but I don't think he did. Is there something similar that he might have said about something about one's confidence? Don't think so.
Right. Okay.
Can I say, that is a great piece of advice.
You know, it's like a gift. When I might, sometimes when I'm talking to at times, it's so true. My favourite, Aristotle, you've got to dance like nobody's watching. It's so true, and you can apply it to anything, because my confidence is quite brittle at times, and I know I come across as quite confident, but sometimes when I'm talking to experts, I worry that, you know.
That is amazing advice, I think. Dance like nobody's watching. I try to do the same thing in my videos, right? Like, I feel like if I start a reaction and I think about, oh my God, there might be thousands of people who look at me, like, it'll affect, I think, how I come across, and it'll be less genuine. But when I really imagine that, like, I'm not talking to anyone, I'm making a video for myself and no one else, I think I act in a way that is much more appealing to people. I think that's a great piece of advice. Just like, when you're trying, just act like nobody's watching. That's brilliant.
You know, I might come across as a
Thanks,
bit
Philomena
thing
Cunk.
about dancing.
But what they okay.
She's like a Michael Scott / Sasha.
Experts may disagree
Owen.
over what they actually said, but there's no doubt these Greek pioneers changed the way we think. Did a philosopher ever think of an idea so big it split their head open?
Not that I'm aware of.
You know how the human brain is full of pipes? Philosophers
I'm not.
You didn't know about that?
I didn't know about
Okay,
that.
They
well,
are.
the brain's full of pipes.
Neurons.
You know how philosophers have these thoughts and they try and push these thoughts through these pipes? When you're having
1 second, guys.
a big idea, is it best to break it up into lots of little thoughts about the size of peas?
Jeez, sorry, I didn't have the audio on.
And squeeze them through in quick succession, or just bite the bullet and force it through your mind pipe in one huge clod, like gritting your teeth and thinking for dear life?
Well, that's a very interesting way of describing two general tendencies in philosophy.
I love
One,
this guy.
the more analytic style, which means cutting problems up into bite-sized portions, and the other, a more synthetic approach, which takes on a larger perspective. So your characterization is, in fact, a rather intriguing delineation of two major strands in current philosophy.
Jeez.
Is that good?
Excellent.
Oh, great. Meanwhile, ancient Greece was being spread across the globe by this man. Alexander the Great.
Yay.
Alexander the Great became a king at 20, conducted a military...
He cheated at that knot. If you can untie this knot, you'll be a god or a hero or good luck. And he just takes a sword to it. Ooh, I'm so edgy. No pun intended. Oh my, and I'm just like, oh wow, you're cheating. Obviously.
Campaign throughout the Middle East and had an empire stretching all the way from Greece to India by the time he was 30. What did his hair look like?
I don't know.
Curly. Whoa,
And
beautiful.
Alexander wasn't the only megastar with his own empire. Huge swathes of China had been
Genghis?
unified by Qin Shi Huang,
Oh.
the first cartoon character to found his own empire and build a Great Wall of China. They say the Great Wall of China is the only landmark audible from space.
I hate this. I always hate it. I'm just like, visible from space. How does a length of anything make it more visible from space? It's gonna be the width that makes it visible.
Yeah, you can't hear it. And they say that you can see it from space, but it's not true.
So
They've tried.
you can't see it from space.
Chinese astronauts have tried to see the Great Wall, and they can't.
They can't see it.
they
So it's
can't see it.
invisible.
It's
It's an
not-
invisible wall, like a force field.
It's only
You'd have a way better chance of seeing the Great Pyramid from space. Well, that's the same color as the sand.
invisible from space. On the ground, you can certainly see it.
That's so weird, isn't it? Is that one of the great mysteries? And do we know if China has a roof? Is there a great roof of China?
No great roof.
Great floor.
The Chinese Empire was a powerhouse of intense creativity and philosophical thought, captured in historical documents
Confucius,
produced
Lao
centuries
Tse.
before the release of unrelated Belgian techno anthem Pump Up the Jam. Empire, and the Chinese had an empire. But when most of us think of the word empire, we think of the big one, Star Wars.
Ah,
Or
Rome.
Rome. And this is history, so it's Rome, I'm afraid. Its empire rose to supremacy under the leadership of Julius Caesar, the most notorious Roman until Polanski. One of the reasons we still know a lot about the Romans today is Wikipedia. And the reason Wikipedia knows a lot about the Romans is because of what happened in Pompeii.
It was there.
Pompeii was so advanced it had its own volcano, which is Latin for angry hill.
I looked that up.
For years, humans and the volcano lived in harmony until one fateful day they fell out and the volcano went off, burying Pompeii beneath a thick layer of ash. Everyday life was frozen in its tracks, as though someone had magically stopped the hands of time and then shat dust everywhere. It was deadly at the time, but on the bright side, it gave archaeologists a treasure trove of information about how the Romans lived. Thanks to the volcano, we know everyday Romans had grey skin, were totally bald, and spent their time lying around inside their shockingly dusty houses. But it also preserved glimpses of how sophisticated Roman life was, with creature comforts like indoor plumbing and cunnilingus. The Roman Empire was years ahead of indoor plumbing and
Is that a real painting?
cunnilingus. The Roman Empire was years ahead of its time. People think the Romans invented loads of things, but often they only perfected things that other people had made.
Greeks.
I'll say some things and you tell me if the Romans invented them or just perfected them, right? Invented or perfected?
Test me.
Underfloor heating.
Invented.
Ding! The calendar.
Perfected.
You wallied. That means you can't answer the next one. Road.
I thought it was the Mayans. Or no, wait, the Romans were before the Mayans.
Yeah, the roads were invented by Persians, and plenty of people knew about roads.
Right, you wallied anyway, you can't answer that one.
All right.
Concrete.
Invented.
Ding! The alphabet.
Oh, definitely didn't not invent it, and probably didn't really perfect it either. I mean, it's sort of...
Got to pick one.
Have I?
Yeah.
I mean, perfected is wrong, not quite right a road. Yeah, right.
Anal bleaching.
What?
Anal bleaching.
Perfected.
I had no idea what they would have done.
Go on, give it a go.
I don't even know what it is.
It's when they bleach your arse.
Right?
Yeah, lighten it up.
Oh, not round my way, they don't. But anyway, I have no idea what they did with that. Pass.
Invented or perfected, you can't pass.
Bleaching.
Yeah.
Just say
Bleaching
invented.
the arsehole.
She's so great.
Okay, well, I would say they invented it, but...
Just a few 100,000 years ago, humans had been living in caves like animals. Now, following a series of technological and cultural breakthroughs, we were living in cities like people. Looking around ancient Rome, our ancestors could have been forgiven for feeling almost as smug as James Corden.
But little did the Roman Empire know it was about to come up against its biggest challenge, a man of peace, Jesus Christ Almighty.
What was I gonna say?
Almost as smug as James Corden.
I don't like James Corden. I don't know why. I just don't like him. I don't know why.
But little did the Roman Empire...
I guess just because, like, he just sings with celebrities in cars and is famous for that. I mean, not gonna hate on it.
Empire know it was about to come up against its biggest challenge, a man of peace, Jesus Christ Almighty, street name Son of God.
Next time, we look at religion and how it spread. Like memes, but with a whole lifestyle and clothing line attached.
And we'll be looking at two of the most important books in...
That was 28 minutes. Time flies when you're having fun.
History, the Bible and the Quran. And finally answering the question, which is best?
Bible. Bible's better, okay? Hands down. I've never read either of them. I'd like to read them, just like as books, you know? Like, people always, like, I'm not a religious person. I used to be super anti-religious. Like, I loved Christopher Hitchens in high school. He was like a god to me. Until I realized he died like 2 years before I even knew he did, so I guess it... I remember just seeing one video of him lecturing with completely bald head, and I'm like, oh no. Don't die. And then I look it up and I'm like, how's he doing? And it's like, he died 2 years ago. So I don't know how much of a fan I could have been of him if I didn't even realize he was dead for 2 years. But I loved him. And I thought religion was the cause of all war on earth until I realized that people just like to fight. And we're going to find, if religion's gone, we'll choose something else. Love you guys. See you guys next time. I love Philomena Cunk. Bye, guys.